In the summer of 1938, in the small town of Marion, Ohio, a boy named Eli Turner built a radio out of scraps. He was 12 years old, pale, quiet, the kind of child who took things apart to learn why they worked. He scavenged wires from his father's barn, tubes from the junkyard, and a cracked tuning dial from a neighbor's broken Philco. By August, the thing worked, not perfectly, but enough. He called it his finder. At night, while his parents slept, Eli would sit at his window turning the dial by fractions, listening to the static swell and fold. He said the sound was like 1,000 whispers, all trying to remember the same song. Most nights he heard only noise. But on September 6, 1938, the static cleared, and someone spoke. It was a man's voice, crisp and clipped like a newsreader. Local authorities have confirmed the fire at Lincoln Street Elementary. No injuries reported. Then silence. Eli froze. Lincoln Street Elementary was his school. There was no fire, not that night. He looked out the window. The street was dark, quiet. He checked the calendar. September 6th, Tuesday. The next morning, the bell at the school never rang. Smoke rose over the roof before sunrise. A heater in the basement had exploded. No one was hurt. The newspapers ran the story with the exact same words Eli had heard. He tried to tell his father, but Mr. Turner, a man of coal and patience, didn't believe in coincidences that couldn't be fixed with a wrench. He told Eli, radios pick up all kinds of nonsense. Air skips, war signals, sunspots. Don't go scaring your mother. Eli stopped talking about it, but he didn't stop listening. He started keeping a notebook. Small pages filled with half-tuned frequencies and strange phrases. Sometimes the voices were too faint to understand. Sometimes they spoke names, and sometimes they said things that hadn't happened yet. On October 4th, Eli wrote, 10:41 p.m., child missing, pond behind Silas Farm. He underlined it twice. The next morning, the sheriff's truck passed the Turner house. A girl from the next township had gone missing. They found her shoes by the pond behind the Silas Farm. That was the first time Eli cried while listening. He said later, to the only person who believed him, that the voice wasn't warning him. It was recording him. That person was Miss Clara Monroe, the town librarian. She was 32, unmarried, and the kind of woman who wrote letters to authors who never replied. She noticed Eli spending long hours at the back table, copying weather bulletins from the newspaper archives. When she asked what he was doing, he said, "Trying to catch up to now." She asked him to explain. He told her about the radio, about the fire, the pond, the notebook. Clara listened. She didn't laugh. Instead, she asked, "What station is it?" He shook his head. "It doesn't have one. It just finds me." Clara visited the Turner home that week. His parents were polite but embarrassed. They said the boy had a vivid imagination and spent too much time alone. But when she looked at the radio, tangled wires, glass tubes glowing faintly orange, she felt a pull, like a hum under her skin. "May I?" she asked. Eli nodded. He turned the dial slowly until the static thinned and something new emerged. Faint music, a woman singing, soft in a language she didn't know. Then the song broke. A man's voice replaced it. "Heavy casualties in Europe as Germany advances beyond..." The sound cut off. Clara frowned. "Germany?" she asked. "What did he say?" Eli whispered, "It's a place that hasn't happened yet." 2 weeks later, October 30th, 1938, the world changed. That was the night of the War of the Worlds broadcast, Orson Welles' famous radio play that sent the nation into panic. People in Marion gathered outside, confused and terrified, thinking the Martians were real. But Eli just sat by his window, notebook in hand, listening. He didn't look surprised. Later, when Miss Monroe asked him what he thought of the broadcast, he said quietly, "That one wasn't from here either." "But it wasn't from there," she asked. "Then where?" He thought a long time, then said, "It's from between the days." After that, Eli stopped going to school. He said he was staying in tune. His mother told the doctor the boy was having nervous spells. But when the doctor visited, he found Eli calm, clear-eyed, and strangely attentive, as if listening to things behind the words. On November 11th, Armistice Day, Eli ran into the library clutching a scrap of paper. He handed it to Miss Monroe and whispered, "Don't let anyone throw this away." Then he left. The note read, "Air crash, South Field, 3 lost, 12:17 p.m. At 12:19, a training aircraft from the nearby base went down in the Turner family's cornfield. 3 men were killed. The sheriff called it a tragic coincidence. The newspaper called it an omen. The neighbors called the Turners cursed. That night, Mr. Turner locked the radio in the shed. He told Eli it was over. No more signals, no more ghosts. Eli didn't argue. He just said, "You can't turn it off. It already hurt us." The next morning, when Mr. Turner went to open the shed, the door was jammed. Inside, the air smelled like burnt dust. The radio was gone. In its place, a coil of wire, a cracked vacuum tube, and Eli's notebook lying open on the bench. The last page read, 11:59, signal close. Can't tell if it's today or tomorrow. Eli Turner was never seen again. Eli Turner was never seen again. No footprints, no note. Just a shed full of static and a notebook that ended at 11:59. The sheriff's report, dated November 12, 1938, described it simply, "Boy presumed runaway. Missing property. 1 homemade radio apparatus. Search inconclusive. The Turners moved away the next spring. They left behind a small gravestone with no body beneath it. It read, Eli Turner, tuned beyond our reach." 20 years later, the story might have stayed buried if not for a man named Harold Dempsey, an engineer with the Federal Radio Commission. In 1958, while surveying old regional frequencies, Dempsey came across a faint continuous transmission on 472.3 kilocycles, well below any legal broadcast band. He described it as a whispering carrier tone. Not Morse, not music, not language, but layered, like several voices overlapping. At first, he assumed it was feedback from atmospheric noise. But when he played the tape back at half speed, something recognizable emerged. Local authorities confirmed the fire at Lincoln Street Elementary, the exact same phrase Eli had written 20 years earlier. Dempsey was puzzled. He cross-checked the archives. The broadcast date matched perfectly. But the transmission was new, recorded in 1958, and the original 1938 station had long since gone off air. He wrote in his log, "Signal is repeating itself from a time no longer transmitting." He continued monitoring for several nights. The pattern expanded. Snatches of weather bulletins, music fragments, even laughter. But sometimes, the voices said things that hadn't yet happened. President hospitalized, mild stroke, Washington. D.C. That message aired on October 15, 1957. President Eisenhower suffered his stroke on the 26th. Dempsey brought the tapes to his supervisor. They dismissed it as hoax or coincidence. Still, the frequency intrigued the engineers. They decided to record it continuously for 1 week. On the 4th night, the signal strengthened. A child's voice joined the static, thin, clear, and steady. It said, "You shouldn't have built it again." The transmission ended with a sound like paper tearing through a phonograph needle. The next morning, the reel-to-reel recorder had burned out. A single line of melted tape stretched across the floor. The commission archived the incident under Case File 472B, marked Anomalous Reflection, Unconfirmed Origin. The tapes were boxed and stored in Washington, along with Dempsey's notes. He resigned 3 months later and moved west. In one letter to a colleague, he wrote, "It's not a signal. It's an echo that hasn't found its moment yet." In 1973, a young researcher named Elaine Mercer discovered the tapes while cataloging old files. She was a radio historian from Ohio, by coincidence from Marion, the same town Eli had lived in. When she heard the whispering loop, she recognized something. Not the words, but the rhythm. She said it sounded like someone tuning by instinct, searching for a station that didn't exist. She re-recorded the static onto a new reel and played it through modern filters. Beneath the hiss, she found fragments of sentences. Try to catch up to now. Between the days. Not warning. A recording. Those were phrases from Eli's notebook, phrases no one outside Marion had ever known. Elaine went to the Marion Historical Society and found the microfilmed sheriff's report. In the margin, next to boy presumed runaway, someone had written in pencil, faint but legible. He didn't run away. He was called. No initials. No date. Elaine became obsessed. She built her own receiver based on Eli's sketches, which had survived in the county archive. She used vintage parts, tubes, dials, wire from a 1930s chassis, trying to recreate his finder. On February 10, 1974, around 2 a.m., she caught something, a low hum rising like breath. Then a voice, a child's. "Is it still 1938? Elaine answered instinctively, "No, it's 1974. There was a pause. Then the same voice said, "Then I made it." The recording ended there. Elaine's notes show the dial reading 472.3. When the signal stopped, all her clocks had shifted back exactly 1 minute. The story might have ended there, except that in 1992, the Smithsonian Radio Archives began digitizing forgotten tapes. Among them were the Dempsey reels. One technician noted something strange. Every time the reel ran, the digital timer displayed 11:59, no matter where he started playback. In one sample, he heard a faint tapping sound layered under the static. He boosted the gain. The taps formed a slow pattern, dash dot dot dash, L. Then it repeated with a shift, E-I-T. The letters spelled E-L-I-T. The recording ended before the fifth. In 2006, a podcasting station in Ohio used one of the archive reels for ambient background in a documentary about early radio. The segment aired at 9:00 p.m. At 9:02, listeners reported hearing a faint child's voice cut through the audio, saying, "Don't record me again." When producers checked the file, the voice wasn't there. But the waveform contained a spectral spike exactly at 472.3 kilohertz. Today, radio enthusiasts call it the Turner frequency. They say on cold nights, when the solar wind is high, you can still find it between shortwave bands, a narrow whispering line that bleeds into local weather reports. Some say if you listen long enough, you'll hear the day after tomorrow. Others say you'll hear yourself a few seconds before you speak. But one clip, rarely shared, is confirmed. Recorded by an amateur in 2013 near Marion, Ohio, it lasts 12 seconds. Static, faint crackle, then a boy's voice. The signal's closing. Can't tell if it's today or tomorrow. Exactly the final line from Eli's notebook. The recording ends with one final sound, a click, like a dial turning off, followed by the faintest whisper of breathing. No official agency acknowledges the existence of frequency. 472.3. The Federal Communications Commission lists the band as inactive, reserved for research. But in the quiet hours, when the air feels heavier and your radio hums on its own, you might notice your local station drift for a moment, like it's being pulled sideways. If that happens, turn the dial slowly. If you hear a boy's voice ask what year it is, don't answer. End of transcript. True Lore Archives, 2025.